Hello everybody, welcome to PROLIM's Lunch Bite series. Today we'll be talking about NX, what's new, 2020. This is part 2 of our series. My name is Bryan Fischer. I am the NX application engineer here. The first thing we want to look at is we want to look at our agenda. So our agenda today includes PMI and drafting. These are enhancements that's been added to on the PMI and drafting area. And we'll look a little bit into some modeling. Fill hole, NX Realize Shape, section tube, and draw cage. Here I have a model open, and we're going to be looking at some PMI orientation enhancement here. The first thing I want to do is make sure I go to application, turn my PMI on, and now I have a PMI tab up here. Now this is a new enhancement that comes in, and once you hit a feature control frame, a note, a dimension, or anything like that, you'll notice these different planes come up. You can now choose the plane from here, or additionally you also have the option to come into orientation and flip through them this manner. Or the shortcut key would be Alt A. Alt A will control it and pick you to different planes. Once you have the plane you like, you can hit Alt L, that will lock the plane, or you have the option to lock it over here. I'll go ahead and pick this plane, and you'll notice when I go to put in my leader here, it will be on that plane. So that's a new feature that's been added. That's called PMI Orientation Enhancement. Now that we have this note, the next enhancement is the background enhancement. So for an individual note, if I click on it, I right click and I go into settings here, you'll notice we now have this PMI background. If I say enable, I can go ahead and choose any different color I want here and make my note that change to that color. If we wanted to make it a company default where these notes come in different colors here and highlight, we would come into File, Utilities, Customer Default, go down and find PMI, PMI General Setup, Display, and down here you could turn it off or on depending on what you want to do there. We'll go ahead and just leave that as it is and say OK. Come back over, and if you want to make it where it's permanently for this session, you go ahead and say Preference, PMI. Once again, PMI, find it, go to Display, and there you have it again. So that would display it permanently for this file. So that is how you would go in and change your PMI background. We're going to continue on with some PMI enhancements. As you can see here on my screen, we have a PMI spherical enhancement. For spherical faces now, we have the S in the diameter sign that is automatically applied to it. And for spherical radius, you automatically get an SR. So let's go ahead and jump back into NX, and we're going to take a look at that. So here on our radial, if we come in and we put this to radial, and I go and I put in a dimension, you see right away that it adds the SR. We still have the option to come in here and change that if that's not what we want, but as a default now, it goes ahead and adds that. I'm going to go ahead and add that one. And we'll change this to metrical here, and I'm going to go ahead and pick a face here. And you'll see right away automatically it adds the S and the diameter sign. Like I said though prior, if we go in to edit it, you do have the option to change that to diameter, DIA, or any other one that's on the list there. You can even go in and change it to S diameter if the S diameter is set as not your default. But as a default right now, straight out of the box, you would get the S diameter and the SR for the two defaults. I'll go ahead and place these two here real quick and go ahead and hit fit again. And we'll go move on to the next step. We're going to bring up another PMI enhancement here. This is for the hole callout. We've added some features that allow you to add additional information, such as the thread pitch, the form, the internal or external symbol. You can change this in the company default, or you can change it as a file preference. There's a few examples down here that I show, one for the AMSI standard and one for other standards. Let's go ahead and we're going to go and do one ourselves real quick. First thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and make this my work part. And we're going to come in and we're going to do a radial. And we'll reset this to what it comes in as default here. Comes in as inferred. Pull this down, go to hole call out, and we're going to call out our hole here. So you can see right now the information I have in there. However, if we want to change that information and add additional information, we now have that option. So to go to the company default change, what we need to do is we'll go into File here, Utilities, Customer Defaults, and we'll go down and we'll find Drafting. Within Drafting here, you have your different standards that you can change. We're going to leave it on ISO here. From there, the next we'll go into Customize Standards. And then we'll go down to Dimension, and we'll go to Hole Callout. So you have your different size holes here and different types of holes. If we go to Symbolic Thread, for example, we now have the option to come in here and pick any of this information here and actually add that to our hole call out. So I'm going to go ahead and go through this list here and find us something here that we may want to add or not add. So let's go ahead and say we want to add the minor diameter. Now if I come in and I said OK, save as, we'd have to close out of NX and come back in for that to take place because this is a customer default, not a file preference for just that file. However, if you want to change it for that file, I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of here. We're going to come back over and we're going to go into the preferences for that particular file or session. So to change it for that file or that session, what we'll want to do is we're going to come up, we'll hit File, Preference, and go into PMI. When I go into PMI here, you go down to your dimensioning and your hole callout. Now you have all these options here to turn off or on, and you have all these different holes to choose from. So let's say we go to our threaded hole here. Notice again, we can turn things off and on. If we wanted to see the minor diameter, we could do that. If we wanted to see the tap drill diameter, we can add to that. So this is a nice enhancement that allows you to go in and add additional information to the hole callout without having to go in and use an annotation editor. We're going to continue on with some more PMI and drafting enhancement. This one here is a note enhancement. This allows us to take and insert NX symbols or Unicodes using a new method called insert symbol. And we'll go ahead and we'll do one of these real quick. So if we come over here and we hit note and we go under format, we now have this symbol here, insert symbol. If we go ahead and hit insert symbol, we have these symbols that we can add here, or if we say more symbols down here, we have additional symbols that we can add. We have the system fonts here, so you could go into pretty much anything that you can do in Word now, you can do within NX. So if we came and picked any of those symbols, we could pick those, or we could come over back over to NX special characters and we could add those, such as hold depth, countersink, countersunk, things like that. This makes it a little bit easier to go in there and actually find them. So if we come in, for example, and I say since, and I say insert, and I close that, and I come back over here and I add a leader, and I pick here, we now have the since symbol. So this allows you to go in there and actually add and insert them a little bit easier than what they have been in the past. So we'll go ahead and fit this. And we'll be moving on to our next one, which is PMI section view for JT enhancements. So with the PMI section views now, we have a JT enhancement. As you can see here on my screen, the customer default area there, that's the area that you can turn it off and on. In previous versions, you can see how it used to look, and in the current NX version, how it will look when you bring in a JT. And we'll go ahead and we'll go through a couple of these and bring them in, and we'll show you how that looks compared to how it used to look. So with the assembly still open, we're going to go ahead and do a PMI section view, and we're going to export it out as a JT, and we're going to bring it back open, and I'll show you the changes that you need to make to be able to bring it in a new manner. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to come over and I'm going to open this in a new window. I've already went in and created a section. So if we go to my model views here and we go to section 1, you'll see how that will look. So we're going to come in and export this. Export JT. We're going to tell it where we want to export it. We're going to export it here, and we're going to call it that and say OK and OK here. Now when I go to open this JT file, we'll have to go and pull this down here, say JT file. If we need it, leave it on the minimal load, you're going to get the old results that you used to see from other versions of NX. We'll go ahead and do that real quick just to show that, and I'm going to say OK. It's going to go and change my default because I have it on minimal load. But for now, we're going to say OK and leave it as it is. If we come back over here, there's our section with our PMI. But if we click on it, you'll notice we don't have a true section. So if we close this one, don't save it, and we bring it in again, and we say Open, JT file, and this time I'm going to say fully load it, and go ahead and select this. Now if we come up to our model views and hit section, notice it retains the section cut the same manner as before. So this is an enhancement that makes section views a little bit cleaner when you're bringing in a JT. The next enhancement we're going to look at is compare enhancement. You can see here the results, the old report, how it had it. And in the new report, it has a little bit more information. And additionally over here, here are the additional objects that are tracked and compared in more detail. We're going to go ahead and open up a Rev A and Rev B of a part that I've already had in the past. And we're going to go ahead and compare some stuff and show how these reports look. We'll go ahead and get out of this. Come back over to my history because I've had them open in the past. So we have Rev A and Rev B. And we'll go to Rev A and PMI, and we're going to come under Compare here. So the first thing you'll notice is the loaded parts. I have all these parts loaded. So right now I have Rev A, and in the comparison part, I want to come and pick Rev B and say OK. So I made a change to a radius over here, and I made a few other little changes, such as this radius here, and so on. We'll go through a few of them real quick. So if I highlight these, you'll notice they'll highlight. And if I go into the radius here and I right click and say show compare information, you'll notice it tell me the information. Here's the object, the description, and then it will also come in here and tell me what the source part was and the new comparison part, what the changes were. So this is a new enhancement that's been added. It makes it a little bit easier to go in and look at the change and see exactly what changed. Not just that it changed, but it tells you a little bit more information on what's changed also. We do have one more PMI enhancement, and then we'll be moving on to a few little draft and part list enhancements, and we'll end this session by going into model and then showing a few little things there. I'm not going to go in and actually do this one, but I do want to let everybody know there's been enhancements to the data package. As you can see here on the screen, a lot of it's got to do with Team Center, and it also has to do with going in and creating some batch files, which will require us to go in and change some variables and things like that. So this information here on this area down here in the far right hand corner will give you the information that you need to go in and change that batch file and things like that if that's what you choose to do. The next thing we're going to be looking at is some enhancements for drafting. This is a parts list enhancement. So here you see I have a model I've already had created with a couple components, And we're going to go and look at the parts list and look at some of the enhancements that have been added. So up here in the drafting, we look at the parts list. This will allow us to create our bill of material and our parts list that we want to look at. So right now it shows 3 items, which is 2 components in the assembly itself. But if we go over to scope here, we do have the option to go top level only, levels only, and you can see here now we only have 2 components. So additionally in here we can show the balloons, which we have done and been able to do in the past, but the difference here now is we can go and actually select the views that we want to show the balloons in. Additionally, we can come into the settings here, and once we're in the settings, we can come in here and easily now come in here and change the location of any column we want. If we come up to sort, we can do the same thing with this here, and this would change the order of which we want. We could go alphabetical or we could go manual, depending on what we want to do. And if we want to add columns, it's become a little bit easier too. So if I came over here and I say add column, it adds a row there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say in this one here, I want to add material. So I've already added this material into my file here. And you can see right there, we have the new material for those 2 components. If we don't like how this is worded in the title, for example, how it says PCNO, and we want to say item, we just come up here and say item, hit enter, and now we have enter. As you can see down below here in the parts list, it updates as I update that information. It's an easier manner for us to now go in there and actually change things and see those things being changed. And now I just go in and I place my item, and as you can see right here, it balloons it out. It's ballooning it out right now as a material because that's my first line. If I went back in here and I changed this to item 1 and 2, it should go in and make that change also. So I'll go into settings here, columns, and let's make this item here and close out. And as you see now we have 1 and 2. So the first item in your columns here will show up as your balloon. Now if we want to come in and export this out as a bill of material, we now have that option also. So we can come in here, select my parts list, right click, and down here we have export. So it will export this table out. I can do a file, I can do an information window, I can do browser. Let's go ahead and do a browser here, and if I say OK, you have a bill of materials there that you could send off to somebody. So that there is our parts list enhancements, and we will be going to do additional stuff in modeling coming up next. Next on our agenda, we'll be looking at some modeling here. We'll go into the fill hole enhancements. We'll go through this list over here that I have on my PowerPoint slide. The biggest difference now with connected holes is we have some selection area that allows us to pick some different settings. And additionally on top of that, now when you bridge gaps and things like that, it will take 2 different bodies and actually combine them together. I already have a modeled open here in NX. And as you can see, I have a convergent model here. This convergent body is a scanned object, and the scanned object may not always come across as clean as you like. You may have some breaks here, holes there, things like that. And we're going to go in and clean this up a little bit. If we look at the polygon model in here, we have fill hole. Under fill hole, if I go ahead and I select my body, and we have a selection method. This is a new method here that allows us to say all, and you notice that would fill in all the body there. We'd still have our gap there, so that may not be what we want. So we could always come back and say user select, and we could go and individually select them. The next thing we want to look at is closed notch. So here we have closed notch, and we'll have our body already selected. So from there, I'm going to come in, and we're going to close this little notch here that I have. You come over, pick your vertex, pick your second one, And you can see here we get a preview of what it's going to be. And if that's not what we want, we do have some more options down here for smoothness. You have linear, tangent, curved, and you can see it changes it a little bit. It depends on what you're doing and what you need, but this is the ability to let you go and do stuff like that. Next, we'll move on to some bridge gap here. The bridge gap works similar to the notch, but it's going to bridge something from one body to another. So if I come in here and I have my body already selected, we're going to select this vertex here. And we'll pick this one here. And then we'll come to the opposite side. And you'll see there that it bridges it. Once again, we do have the options down here in smoothness. We can go linear, redefined, tangent. And it all depends on what you really need and what you're trying to get done. So these are a few of the new enhancements in Fill Hole. And this allows you to come in there and start cleaning up your convergent body or your scanned objects. And it's a real nice feature that gives you more options now. Next, we're going to be moving on to some Realize Shape, and we'll be looking at section tube and draw cage. With NX still open, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to another model here for the Realize Shape. I've already opened this model, and this model here, I've already done a little bit of Realize Shape in here, and this is subdivision modeling. So we're taking this convergent model and we're going to make it into a subdivision model, and this subdivision body allows us to go in there and actually change it a little bit and maybe make some updates that we want, things such as that. It just gives us a little bit more options to be able to work with it. So I'm going to come in over to subdivision model here that I started, and I'm going to say edit parameters. And first thing we want to do is I want to make sure symmetric modeling is on, because I'm going to model on one side and I want it to do the same thing on the other side of the model. So section tube, I went up here and I'm typed in section tube up in my command finder, and the reason I'm doing that is because when you hit this here, you can see that it's currently hidden. This is how it is out of the box. However, you can add it into any of your toolbars and things such as that, or you can go to the pull down here. I'm just going to go ahead and enter the command here and start doing the work. So the first thing I want to do, like I said, is I want to make sure that the symmetric modeling is still on, which it is. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start selecting areas where I want to start my tube. So you see there is my first point. And you can make this more sections or less sections depending on how much you want to control it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start picking some points here. And you see here, it starts to draw a cage around it. What that allows me to do, if I go ahead and OK this, is I can come in here to transform cage. And anybody that's worked in Realize Shape or any subdivision modeling, this works in the same manner. It's got a cage around it. I can take these edges, I can take these points, and I can start stretching and moving them. So you can see here, I can quickly start taking this, and it's almost like playing with clay. You're able to go in there and, take these areas and then move them real easy. So that's section 2. And it's a real nice thing that will let you take this convergent model and quickly start making it into a model that you can edit later on. So to continue on, we want to take this model and we want to do some more stuff to it. So we're going to look at another feature here, enhancement that's been added. It's called Draw Cage. And Draw Cage, just like Section Tube, is out of the box. It's not on, but if we come up here to our command finder again and we go ahead and say Draw Cage, once again, I'm just going to start the command. If it's a command that you find that you're using often, you can always add it to your toolbar. So here in Draw Cage, we're going to go in and you can start specifying points. And you see I quickly start CAD faces that I'm able to go in and actually manipulate later on in the same manner that I was manipulating the tube. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to this. And because I had symmetric model and still on and I never got out of it, you notice it added the faces over here too. So I could then come in, transform cage, and go in and start moving this. I can take sections, I can take the whole line like this, take points. I'm going to go ahead and OK that. I'm going to rotate it here a little bit so you guys can see. And we're going to hide this main body. And there you go. Those are the faces now that I can start playing with and start manipulating. So that's the last feature on the webinar. Thank you for attending. If you have any questions afterwards, go ahead and put them in the comments section, and we'll get to them and answer them. Thanks again.